Welcome to the Live to Lift Up podcast. This is a storytelling space inspired by the life, lessons, and legacy of Sandy Mahonathan. So this podcast was born from Mom's philosophy, Live to Lift Up, and a legacy initiative inspired and spurred by Claude Mahonathan, Sandy's soulmate of 43 years. My name is Danielle Courtney Mahonathan. I'm Sandy's daughter. And alongside me as my co-host is Pranay Govender, Sandy's dear friend. Hi, Pranay.
Hi, Danielle. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm doing good, thank you. I think first things first is maybe to get into why LiftUp. What does the acronym that is LiftUp stand for? So the L is love, unconditional love, because Mom lived freely without limits or expectation. The I is to inspire through kindness, because she inspired others not just through her words, but through gentle acts of kindness. The F stands for foster, growth and harmony, leaving every place better than before, because she believed in nurturing people and spaces to bring out their best. The T stands for together, lived by the philosophy that together we all lift as we rise, because she loved beyond boundaries, faith, culture, or background, and saw everyone as connected. The U stands for universal. She lived as a universal and global citizen, and she lived by the belief that when one of us rises, we bring others with us. And the P, last but not least, is for passion, to live with passion, because Mom did live wholeheartedly in her faith, creativity, and anything that she loved or anyone that she loved. And each episode is a ripple. It's sharing stories that honor Mom's love, kindness, and light. So without further ado, today we introduce you to Liz Rafferty. Mom and Liz met in Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA in August 2011, when Mom was given the opportunity to head up HR for Accenture South Africa's diamond client, BestBuy. What began as a professional relationship quickly turned into a deeply personal one, with countless countries traveled to and explored together, inclusive of on the African continent. And they maintained this bond and this friendship long after leaving the USA.
When Sandy's sister Marla passed away in 2019, Liz, Sandy, and Claude were actually together on holiday in Spain when they had received the news. And Liz was very instrumental in ensuring that Sandy not just got home safely, but she actually journeyed with her to show support to the family back home. I know from all of my interactions with the family that Liz holds a very special place in their heart and is actually seen as their extended family. Liz, it is indeed a pleasure to welcome you here today, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Danielle and Pranay. It's lovely to be here and to think about my dear friend Sandy. I do every day. This is just a special occasion. As you mentioned, it started out as a work relationship. We were both up at BestBuy, and I remember the day that Sandy and Claude moved there. It was right before the Minneapolis State Fair, and that began our journeys and adventures. And as you said, we've crossed many experiences, both happy and sad. When we were together in Spain with our friend Caroline, also from Minneapolis and BestBuy, who's on many of the adventures with us also. It's in those moments that you know your true friendships. There is no judgment. You can be yourself, good, bad, and all of the things that make us truly human.
You've already brought back specific memories and stories that I'm really excited for you to share today with both of us and the audience listening in. But before we kick this off, could you please do a little storytelling on your background that you have up there? Because that in itself is a story to share and tells something in itself, right? So particularly the world face map on your wall, and why traveling together. I think let's start there, right? I think that's pretty poignant part of this, about why traveling together was so critical to the connection you will always have with Mom and Dad. The learning, the journeying, what it was rooted in very specifically in terms of the values and seeing humans for humanity, right? Because your travels together are particularly poignant, as you'd said it up front, in terms of no judgment. There are no shadows. It's raw authenticity, whether it's happy, it's sad, it's the good, the bad, the ugly, as it were. So please give us a bit of the BTS, the behind the scenes.
Yes. Yes. So I grew up in a very small town in Illinois, and I didn't travel much. My first travel experience was actually with Accenture in 2007, and I didn't even have a passport at the time. And so to think about that and where I am now, which is all of this and hopefully much more to come, frankly, I think that was a bond that we shared in terms of learning and experiencing other cultures. It's not just enough to go visit a place, but I think what your mom and Sandy really brought with her is a curiosity and a genuine interest in learning about people, about their cultures, about their lives. And so this picture that you can see, and I'll do this for 1 second, I don't want to go out of frame, but you can see the map there. It's made up of faces of people, and it's the world map. And then you see all the pictures, which I'm pretty sure 90% of these pictures were with Sandy and Claude. And again, our friend Caroline was there as well. The faces represent for me. And I remember your mom and I having this conversation about this map. I was following this gentleman. His name is Salventius, and he's an artist. He does one-line drawings. So you drop your pen and do this. I'm not artistic by any means, so I was fascinated by this. And I was following him, and he had produced this image. And I remember talking to your mom about it. And I said, I just love this picture because it's faces. And it represents the world, and it represents people. We're both HR professionals, right? So, people often say you do HR, you must love people. I think we understand people. And I think your mom and I shared that connection. And so when this artist came out with this limited edition print, I said, I have to get it. And your mom and I had a conversation about it. And so now it anchors my office here in Florida with all of the pictures of the places that I've been, but many of the places that Claude and Sandy and as I said, our friend Caroline and other friends had gone on with us. And it's a constant reminder for me that we are humans, right? And we bring with us all of the humanness, right? And I think your mom taught me that and reinforced that for me on all of our trips. I remember we were in Peru and in the Amazon rainforest, and I'm pretty sure I booked that trip, which was a huge mistake. Climbing up the side of a riverbank, piranha fishing at 5 in the morning. This is not the kind of trip that we would normally do. But even in the worst of moments, right? Those moments bring out your fear, all of those things. And then moments where perhaps we were in Ireland, right? Which is one of my most favorite places. And, I was elated and seeing my family headstones from way back in the centuries. And just, you experience all of those emotions when you travel. And then to bring into it the curiosity and the true, genuine interest in learning about the people, the cultures, and taking that back with you. And I think that's why your mom shared so much of that on social media, Facebook, was because she wanted to share that with other people too.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Liz. I certainly remember the stories that she shared about that Amazon trip and how freaked out she was. When she told me about it, I had goosebumps on my body because I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how you actually did that. But what a beautiful way to illustrate the journey of friendship that you both had traveling to all these different parts of the world. And, I love that you mentioned all of the humanness, because when I think about Sandy, and it's the L in the LiftUp acronym, she really did embody this love, this unconditional love that really just strengthened you. It didn't consume you and smother you, but it strengthened you and it quietly built you. And I only appreciate this now but I know that she held you with such deep belief, Liz. I want to ask, Liz, when you think of Sandy, how did she show you unconditional love?
You have your good moments and your bad moments, right? And even in the moments where perhaps I was stressed or maybe, we were on a trip and I didn't want to go shopping, which would not happen, by the way. Your mother and I shopped like kindred spirits. I mean, it was bad and good at the same time. But even in the moments where maybe we had a disagreement, and I can't really even think of one, I'll be honest with you, but I'm sure that we did, even in maybe the work setting. Um, it was always She always brought with her, if she was disagreeing with you or something of that nature, she always brought with you a point of understanding, if that makes sense. Where it wasn't out of judgment or anger or whatever. Even if there was something that she was disagreeing about, she tried to teach. And we had many conversations. I grew up in a very small town in the middle of the country. And, Sandy would share with me stories of her upbringing and some of the adversity that she faced. And, I faced my own version of that. And I remember her saying to me, you have to teach others, you have to help them understand, right? You can't just walk away from something. And that's something that, I'll be honest, is a lesson for me because I always try to remember that, where when you have a moment where you're frustrated with a friend or a colleague or whatever it may be, you can't just walk away from it, right? You need to try to impart some sort of learning for them, right? And I think she did that in truly a way of wanting to be helpful to them, right? Not that she was superior or anything like that. It was more that she wanted to help the other person. And I truly believe that. And I remember us having those conversations about, you know, um, teaching a lesson or leaving them with something, something maybe they didn't know before, kind of thing. So I think she carried that with her again in those adverse moments, or maybe when you were having a challenge. I think she brought that even into those moments, just as she did in the high moments as well.
I hear you. I absolutely agree with you, Liz. There was always a lesson. And, um, you know, as her child and Brett and I, being that part of her world, she didn't always love softly, which I'm so grateful for, um, because it was full. It was a very full, authentic, unadulterated love, right? And it was passionate because she felt so deeply, because it meant something to her. Because, like you said, there was always a caring depth to it, right? And as the pen Lift Up poignantly shares, it was the passion that was consistent there. And um, I'm glad you couldn't necessarily pinpoint one moment, but the consistencies of the friendship and where that love really came through, right, Liz? So I think on that point of the love, and that belief, how did it shape the way that you lead, right? Especially when people look to you for strength, because you have your hands in many pies, right, on the regular. I think this is something we've always known about you, and particularly your extensive experience in the NPO space. So if it's possible, if you could maybe share more on this too, as an extension of the love filled question in your professional life.
I think, again, it's that care for other people and wanting to leave something better than maybe you found it. Or maybe that's an Accenture, something that we learned during our time together at Accenture, right? I still carry that with me. I think to give to other people, you can do that in many ways, right? Some people do that monetarily, and that's fine, right? That's certainly important. I try to do that through my heart and soul, frankly. It's why I do HR as a profession, to help coach, guide, and enable others. It can be a tough place, right? Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions, and for me, it's about how you do that, right? Difficult things, like you said, she loved strong, right? Wasn't always the softest hand, but it was a true and genuine hand, right? That still came with love, and I think I try to do that in my HR career, to be honest. And when I was working with a nonprofit here in the United States, Genesis Works, which I'm still very much involved with, um, I see these young people coming up, right? And much like me, they're coming from backgrounds, again, different, but that weren't full of privilege and different things. And so they're investing, right? What I enjoy about that program is they're investing in their futures. They're investing in making the commitment. And I want to help support, guide, and promote that. And so I think in any, I don't want to say coaching because that's sort of a unique thing, but in any conversation that I have with, if I am coaching or advising someone in the workspace, or even, working with young folks, I think I take some of your mom's lessons for me into that, right? That you can deliver the hard message, right? But do it in a way that's helpful to them. Um, one of the former employee of mine from Best Buy, actually, or Accenture up there, said to me once, "You said to me once," and I'm gonna bleep it out, but own your stuff. It's not exactly what I said, but and they reached out to me some weeks back, and they said, "I remember you telling me I came to your office and you were complaining about something, or I was complaining about something, and you said to me, 'Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Own your own stuff and focus on that.'" Right? This has been how many years? 15 years. And they came to me and said, "I remembered you said that to me." And so maybe that's a similar way of, it was a pretty direct statement. Um, but it helped them to understand of, you've got to take care of what you're responsible for and demonstrate that way. Other people will take care of their own, and you can't own their stuff, so to speak. But to hear that replayed back to me so many years later, it meant something. But I think it was in a similar vein. It was pretty direct, but it had an impact. And hopefully it's something that, has served them, down the line.
So that is pretty inspirational in itself, Liz. That 15 years ago, the lesson that inspired somebody came to the fore and they played it back to you. And that's, I think, such a good way in which to talk about I, right, in the acronym of inspiration and inspire, because Mom inspired people not only through big gestures, like you said, money is important, right? And doing it in a monetary way, but it's not the only way. It is also through softness, kindness, gentle but powerful moments or ways. And so on that, can you possibly recall, Liz, when Mom's kindness inspired you to see yourself, your work, or the world that you do, or the world in a different way? And as an extension of this question, how did this further propel you to keep inspiring others? What is your secret sauce to success in this regard? What was this lesson for you?
Probably as I mentioned, Genesis Works, the organization that I've been connected to. Actually, it was introduced to them in Minneapolis when I was at Best Buy. And, many years later, I made a career decision to actually leave Accenture at the time, and go to Genesis Works full time as an executive director for their Chicago program. And I think probably some of it was that choice, right, to go from a almost 20-year corporate career where I had been there. I loved Accenture, I still do, and to then make a pretty major shift to go be an executive director of a nonprofit. I think some of the inspiration helped me in making that decision and having the courage, right, to make a decision like that. Um, I don't even know how old I was at the time. I forget at this point, but it was a big change for me. I was familiar with the organization. I had worked with them for many years as a champion, right? And Accenture had afforded me that opportunity to then go and actually be a part of that organization and help in that environment, was amazing. But it was big. And I remember, now there are books, like there's a book called Leap where it talks about, making changes and having courage. And I think at the time, your mom was probably that source of courage for me to make that big shift in my career. And having the ability and knowing that, hey, you know what? You don't know what's around the corner. But if you go into it with courage, faith, and trust in yourself, and also trust in others, generally things tend to work out. And I think that's what enabled me to make that big decision. And I try to bring that to others when I'm speaking with them. And, I've talked with employees, right, about their career decisions. Let's say someone is leaving an organization or wanting a career change. I try to bring those lessons that I frankly learned from your mom and Sandy to those conversations where, again, it's an individual's path, it's an individual's journey, but helping them with that decision, giving them the confidence, giving them the encouragement if that's what they need. I try to bring that into those conversations as well, especially when people are making very important decisions, right? Again, leaving an organization perhaps or wanting a career change. I try to bring that because I do reflect on what she gave to me in that moment when I was making that kind of a decision in my life. Sometimes you need the encouragement of others when maybe you're not so sure yourself. And I think she had a way of being that person for people. And I know there are others who she's coached and mentored now to very senior level positions. It doesn't surprise me at all, not in the least, in the way that she would go about that.
Thank you, Liz. And I can totally agree with her being your strongest cheerleader and supporter. I've seen that in so many conversations and mentoring relationships, professional relationships that she's had. And kudos to you for taking that courageous leap and for following that passion so strongly. I want to go back and talk about being in HR. You said it. It can be a tough place to be when you have to give some tough love. But tell me about a time where, how do you influence and how do you inspire people when leadership feels heavy to you?
I would not use the example I gave earlier. That was probably not the best, the best example. But I think part of it is, and again, taking from your mom, I saw her do this so many times from Sandy, meeting people where they are, right? Which in doing that comes without a sense of judgment, right? You don't know the path that they've been on. You don't know, kind of what's in their hearts perhaps or in their minds. So I try to take the approach of meeting them where they are and having the conversation from there, right? It's not about what I want. It's not about what I think. It's about what they need and where they want to go and helping enable them through that. But you have to start with, again, I say meeting them where they are. That helps, again, put you in a position of being an advisor, not someone that's telling them what to do. I think, again, when I reflect back on when I saw Sandy in this kind of an environment during our time at Accenture together, and again, even as a person, right? I saw her do this on trips when she was talking to people. You have to meet people where they are and truly look at what their desires are and what their wants are. It's not about you in that moment. It's about how you can truly enable and support them for what they're looking for and what they need. And it's not about giving them the answer. I think your mom was sort of a natural coach, to use that word. Sandy was a natural coach because that's how she approached most things, right? She didn't surmise to know the answer. She didn't tell you, Danielle, you and Brett, maybe it may be a little different, but she didn't tell people what to do, right? She helped them see the path. And I think there was a natural coach element to her in that. And that is starting from where people are and helping them navigate to the answer that's right for them. Maybe it's not always the right answer, but you have to start and recognize. It's the other thing with being in HR. People say you must love people, and I do love people, but I think part of it is you understand people, and I think Sandy certainly did that. Right, you understand that people are human beings, and all of the things that makes us who we are, good, bad, the lessons and the journeys that we all take. And I think there was a natural coach to her in that. It's not natural for me, but I try to, as I said, when I talk with employees, even now in my current role, you meet people where they are and you help them see the path. right, forward. And sometimes that will turn out well and maybe not others, but it also, I think there's a bit of respect that comes with that as well, right? Respecting them as individuals and respecting them as humans. I think that's the other piece that Sandy brought so strongly, is that she always treated people respectfully in her interactions. Didn't matter who they were or what they were. There was a genuine and innate respect and generosity that came with her. And that in and of itself, frankly, is a lesson and something that inspires, because we're all humans and we have our moments, as I say sometimes. But I think she brought that with her in 90% of her interactions.
Absolutely. And I think it was so consistent in its application that I've seen. And, one of the things that I always admired about her and what she taught me is about seeing talents in other people. And she had this way of sussing out, who's got talent. And I don't know, it's almost like she could just smell it, even before you could even like say, oh, hold on, is that me here? But she had this way, and it brings us into the next segue, which is around, how she fostered growth and how she, brought people together. What I found is that when she saw talent and identified talent, she supported you, she coached you in her natural style. But she didn't just open the door for you. She walked you through them by your side, checking in, if it was a WhatsApp or a telephone call. And there was this genuine sense of nurturing and caring that came with it, which I appreciated.
I mean, again, look at so many people whose lives that she touched, again, personally and professionally. And even to some extent, I will offer, and this is a little, maybe a bit of a sidestep, but when she and Claude left the US to go back to South Africa, we made a commitment that we would meet up somewhere in the world every year. And to some extent, I feel like even in that, right, there was sort of not only continuing the connection, but I think, again, wanting to continue to grow as friends and as people. I suppose that's a little bit of a sidestep from thinking about her in that way in the work setting. But I think even in, as you said, Pranay, her WhatsApps or, keeping those connections going for whatever it may be. COVID had an impact on us, obviously, because we couldn't do our travels and various things. And then Claude and Sandy actually came to my home here in Florida in 2024, which I was delighted to have them be able to come here. And it was like time didn't pass, right? Even through the COVID times, moving around since Minneapolis, and we always stayed connected. There was always a way, whether it was just a quick drop in. But I think to your point, Pranay, it was about fostering the relationships and the friendships, and even that, right? The human connection was, I think, the most important thing to her, whether it be in a work setting, in a personal setting, someone that she met on a trip, right? I remember, again, the Amazon rainforest. We were sitting there with our group of people. They put us together in a group, and we were sitting there at the dinner table one night. She took a genuine interest in each one of the people that were at the table. And it was the other group was a group of teachers from California, as I recall. And Caroline was on that trip with us as well. And so we had this whole conversation, and she genuinely took an interest in what they did and who they were and why they were on this trip and what they were taking away. And I do think it was a bit of that, fostering individual growth and connections. And I think she also took from those experiences too, right? It helped her to continue to grow as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she would often be so appreciative of those as well. Like she would just vocalize it. I can remember a few times in our story, in our journey, where she would say, thank you for this because it's taught me something. And I would, I'd be like, why are you thanking me? But she was just so genuinely appreciative.
And she tried to show people in so many different ways, right? Didn't have to be the grand gesture. Again, I shared this before, but when she came to visit me, she brought me a scarf that she had found in a shop. And again, the shopping was one of the things we had in common. So, but she said, I thought you would like this. And she was always buying things for people, right? Because again, I think she wanted to share her experiences with them, both through her photos, through her stories, through little mementos, things of that nature. And even in that way, I think she was just showing and fostering those connections, right? And truly lifting people up. Because there's nothing, I don't know, for me, you never know what moment someone's having, right? Someone could be having a tough time, and a friend comes and says, I saw this and I thought of you. It doesn't have to mean more than that, but that can mean the world to someone in a moment when they're not having a good day or whatever it might be. And to know that someone thinks of you, a WhatsApp or whatever it was. And as you said, Renee, she was always doing that, leaving those mementos for people to let them know that someone was thinking about them. And I think, again, that's a special gift because relationships can change, evolve, be broken, time passes. But with her, it felt like it didn't.
I love that, Pranay brought in the point about giving gratitude for a lesson, regardless of what it was, or how, that small thing, it's not that small, or Liz the scarf. And I think in that, and how she decided to, or intentionally chose to foster growth and harmony, was leaving, whether it was a place or a person or whatever it was, leaving it better than how she found. And that took the curious nature of meeting you where you're at, or that thing or that place or whatever it was, to be able to make it better, right? And those are such beautiful points that you both share, because they're poignant examples of how it's so simple, whether it is a thank you for the lesson you've just taught me because this is how I've received it and seen you, or what you've gifted me with. And I've thought of you, so here's a scarf, or, whatever it might be. She just found a way to do that so effortlessly, even if it was a message, and continuing those bonds and relationships, because it came from that place of sincerity. It wasn't forced. It was a genuine root of that love and that depth, for fostering that, a true HR professional through and through, right? So I think with this is, how is mom doing this and having left that imprint on your heart and your being, Liz? How do you continue to do this in the lives of others, and not just, from a personal perspective? Because personally, I'll share a story. Liz, we had gone on a trip to Mozambique and Swaziland one year. It was mom, dad, Liz, myself, and our godmother, Auntie Mary. And Liz bought me a pair of beautiful sunglasses called Bonnie and Clyde's, and I still have them to this day. And this was many, many, many years ago. So Liz, you do it very effortlessly in return from a personal perspective. But so thank you for those glasses. I love them. I get commented on them.
They look fabulous.
Look fabulous on. And they're so simple, and yet they suit me. And I always go, well, being loved is a wonderful thing, and this is the person who gifted it to me. And so I think from a personal side, you do it so effortlessly. But how do you bring that into a professional scenario and setting?
I think and again, as an HR person, you work with so many different types of people, right? I'm with an engineering company today. Previously, I was in a marketing organization. Before that, I was with Accenture in technology, and then I was working with young people in the nonprofit. You work with so many different people, and I do think it is about. I mentioned before about sort of meeting people where they are, but it's also about creating an openness, I think, as well. And Sandy did that. I'll tell this quick thing so I don't want to forget it, and then I'll come back. When Sandy and Claude were going back to South Africa, we had some going away parties. And they'd only been, what, Danielle, 2 years, 2.5? I forget how long
Yeah.
they were here. We had a little going away party in Chicago, where I was living at the time, and it was a surprise party for them. And so we were going to dinner one night. We got dressed up, and I remember your mom was like, "Why are we getting dressed up?" And I'm like, "Oh, it'll be fun." And I'm terrible at keeping secrets, so it was very hard for me to keep that secret. But and we came to this restaurant, and we went to this back room, and so many of her friends from Accenture and Claude as well were there, right? Jill Smart and Mary Flowers and David Solis and just countless people. Lori Lovett was there at the time. Like, all these people had come together to give well wishes and love. And the same thing in Minneapolis. Ellen Shook had done a get together for Sandy and Claude. They're going away, and there were folks there. Caroline was there, and Laura Calvo and John Gleason, and so people came, and Ellen hosted that one, and myself and Jill hosted the one in Chicago. But you think about such a short period of time, the impact that they made, and those people that came together to celebrate them. And there were many more, but just those two instances. But I think in terms of how to bring this into the work world, it's the impact that you make, right? I think there's an openness that Sandy had, and I think I try to have something similar where, and I tell people I have my cell phone number on the bottom of my email signature at work. And I've had people say, "Well, you're the chief people officer. Why would you have your cell phone?" Because I'm open, right? I want to be open. I want to be a resource for people. If they have an issue, I want them to know they can come to me at any point. And I think that openness, however you display it, that's my way in a work setting that I try to do that. I also share a lot of Facebook. It's mainly my dog, because she's much cuter than me. And she's much more interesting than me. So, but creating an openness allows people to be open with you and genuine and sincere. And I think your mom did that. That there was just this natural sense that you could share with her. She wouldn't share on. Now Claude probably knew all the deep secrets, which is okay. But I think the openness about being and the phrase that had been used was truly human, right? Or authentic, which is the Accenture way of approaching that. But I think that resonated with her because that's who she was. She was open and was herself in her personal, but also in her work. And I think I try to do that. And I try to encourage others to be open that way. I try to reflect on that. And again, being open also means that you're human, right? And it doesn't mean that you do everything perfect, right? And it doesn't mean you expect others to do everything perfect. And I think, again, going back to before, I think that puts you in a position to be able to encourage others, to coach others from a place of genuine openness. And I think she had that, and she displayed that, which creates a different type of an engagement with people in the work setting, and allows you to truly coach them and inspire them from a human place, not from a corporate place.
It totally makes sense. And, that openness and accessibility that you spoke about, I would often tell me, oh, yes, this person called me on the weekend and I was just doing something and I had to do a little bit of work here or something. She was always available to people beyond office hours. And I could certainly see that. But the one thing I want to call out is also the trust factor, where she was able to be human, but also be able to hold trust, so that those relationships were safe, and that's something that I also witnessed, because she wouldn't go into the details of stuff, but that trust factor was very important for her as well.
I think that forms those relationships again, whether it's in the work setting or outside. That trust is critical, right? Because even if you're friends, you need that and you want that and expect that. Same true, obviously, in the work environment as well.
Yes, so true. So true. Now, I know that there's a lot of listeners to this podcast who are working professionals, and I'd love for you to share the not so glamorous side of being in the business world globally. You know, when you spoke about the humanness of being a human, you're also, you can sometimes be faced with difficult decisions that you have to make that keep you up at night. Can you tell us about a time when you had to make a difficult decision? And how did Sandy help you navigate that?
I think probably one of the biggest decisions, if I may, and I mentioned it before, is when I chose to leave Accenture and go to a nonprofit. That was one of the hardest decisions I ever made. Right. Um, I love Accenture. I did before, and I still do. That company organization hold a special place in my heart, as do the people. Right. There's just something about when you meet someone and they say, "Oh, I'm with Accenture." Like there's just this instant connection that I feel like you have. Even in my current role, I interview people and they say, "Oh, well, this person's from Accenture. Liz, you should meet with them." Right. Because there's a connection. So when I left there to go to the nonprofit, it was a very difficult decision for me because I still loved Accenture and I wasn't leaving because of, animosity or anything. My boss at the time, Ellen and Hillary and all of the folks were wonderful. But I also felt this sort of calling. I hate to use that word because it's maybe a little cliche, but this calling to go be a part of the nonprofit and really immerse myself in that. And so I remember having the conversations with Sandy about it because, it involved a lot of things. Some might say, well, that was a step back in your career, right? You're going to a nonprofit, obviously compensation is different and things. But she also encouraged me at the same time to follow what I needed and how this wasn't a step back, that it was actually a step in a different direction. Right. And I think that's where you've got to look at things and say, what makes sense for you? And if you're making those difficult decisions, right, that you've got to come at it from a place of trusting your gut, right? Being confident in what your gut is telling you, perhaps, and having the courage to take that step. I did that role for probably maybe 2.5 years. And then I did decide to go back into the corporate environment and went to Dentsu, which is a marketing company. And I'm sure that Sandy and I had conversation about that as well. But I think that's what the beauty of it was for her. And I think because we did HR, and oftentimes there are difficult decisions that need to be made in that environment. You don't shy away from those, but you come at them with courage, with trust. And also, and this is again, something that I think I learned at Accenture is respect, right? When I'm having a difficult conversation with someone in the work environment, whether it's in an HR capacity or in a colleague capacity, I come at it from a place of trust and respect, right? And I think that's the thing that maybe the respect, Pranay, actually helps to foster the trust, right? If you're having a difficult conversation with someone and you're coming to them from a place of respect and recognizing that can innately build a sense of trust as well. And I think she gave that to me in those moments when, again, I was making a difficult personal decision. So she instilled in me, as you said before, trust that we could have a conversation. I could share with her my open feelings about it. Maybe I was uncertain, right? Sometimes that's hard for people to do. But if you build from that, it can serve you because we are all professional humans in our work world. I don't believe that and again, Sandy, I think embodied this, but I don't believe that you're one person at work and one person at home, right? Yes, you have to maybe be different, be a little bit different, but you are who you are. And if you bring that authenticity and that truly human aspect to your day and to your, off work time, I think it does build a sense of trust with people and enables them to want to come to you with questions or advice. So So I think it goes back to that openness, the treating people with respect, and then the genuine curiosity that she had as well. Sorry, that was kind of a long answer. Sorry.
Not at all. I mean, there was a lot that you shared within that as well, and the coaching aspect of it, and and not just from you, but from so many others that mom coached naturally. I think this is a little bit of an intuition question, like you shared, right? It came from supporting somebody to go with the intuition, but with mom not physically here anymore, how are you continuing to draw on these lessons and the strength and the guidance, and the wisdom from her?
I think about her every day, pretty much, in some form or fashion, right? Something will happen and I'll think, I see these photos all over my office of different things. I'm planning a trip here and there. I'm actually trying to, Danielle and Pranay, come to South Africa, maybe in March timeframe or something. Various things will happen, right? Some more direct than others, but I think about her every day, and I try to bring these lessons, right, to LiftUp, to my day, whatever it is that I'm doing. I've recently made a decision to make a career change again, so hot off the press. But and I think about this discussion of when I was in this place in the past, what were the conversations that we had? What are those lessons of? So probably I'm relaying a little bit of having courage, right? Knowing what truly matters to you, right? As a human, what gives you energy. This is the other thing that we didn't touch on, but I think one of the conversations we had in the past was really reflecting on what gives you energy, right? What are the things that truly give you energy versus what are the things that you just kind of have to do, right? And I think I learned that from your mom, and I reflect back and see those things that gave her energy, talking with other people, engaging with other people, supporting other people. Those are the things that gave her the energy, right, that she had. And I think for me, similarly in some ways is learning about other people, learning about other cultures, supporting other people and doing things. And I think those are the lessons that I take with me every day in small ways and big ways, as the case may be. But I think I also try to share some of that, the learning parts, right? That, which she would speak with people, she would try to leave them with something. I try to do that as well in my own way, maybe not as profound. But I try to do that in my own way at my work, and then again in my personal life too. So yeah, and I think again the story I gave before about the person who came back and relayed to me from 15 years ago. It was a small comment, but I see where they are now, and I see how they've thrived and how they've grown, and I'm happy for them, right? And hopefully that was something that enabled them to have courage, be insightful, take the leap, so to speak, if that's what they were seeking to do. That's what I try to take with me, and that's what I think I try to offer to other people as well.
Well, if I think about how the relationship of coaching personally and professionally between you and mom moved, right? That sounds like pretty tough lessons in there. It sounds like very character shifting and moving lessons, if I could put it that way, diplomatically, right? Because we spoke about the tough love aspect of mom, and it was rooted in care, but it was, it really pushed you, it really stretched you, and asked those questions that maybe we didn't want to ask, or we didn't want to hear, or we didn't really want to face, and to have the courage to do that and move and grow with it. So what do you feel did mom challenge you in, and what did you learn from that experience alone?
And she did that in her own way, Danielle, to your point, right? The tough parts. I don't think, and again, being a friend versus a daughter or a son is probably different, if I'm if I'm honest, but I don't think she did that without making you feel bad, if I may say that. She would do it in a way as to not, right, there was a lesson there, or she would challenge your thinking or something, but she did it in such a way that it didn't make you feel less. It didn't make you feel that you didn't know something, or it didn't make you feel less than. It made you reflect, maybe is the right word. She would offer you a challenging thought or a point of view. Again, I remember the conversation that we had early on when I don't remember, something may have happened. And she was telling me, you have to help people learn, right? And don't judge. And that's something I definitely carry with me from her, is that, again, we've faced adversity in different ways in our own lives. And most people have faced that in some way or other. But she had this point about offering people the opportunity to learn. And I think that's the way that she would challenge, right? As not to be, judgmental, but to be, I want to open their eyes. I want to offer them a different perspective. I want to help them learn something maybe they didn't know. Still giving them their own decision, right, at the end of the day. But I think that's the piece about it. When she would challenge you or question you, she did it in a way that didn't make you feel small, that it made you reflect and see perhaps another point of view.
And, if I can just add on to that, as she did this, she never corrected to diminish you. It was always to elevate. And for us, Claude, Danielle, and I, that, are working through this podcast, the name Lift to Lift Up has so much more deeper meaning, because that's how she lived, and she did this and she taught by lifting people up. And that's what we're trying to do with you and the rest of our guests on this show. So thank you for sharing your growth journey with us. It's really so beautiful to listen to.
And thank you all for doing this and keeping her memory alive and her lessons going. I try to do that every day, and I hope that I'm doing her one little ounce of justice. But thank you to all of you for what you're doing and continuing in her memory. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It really is encouraging. And you are, through the stories you share, through just absolutely every moment or occasion or anything that you've shared in this podcast, you really have reflected the acronym of Lift Up, how you are not just also saying it, but you're living it, and you're doing that consistently, and doing it together with us. And that is one of the letters in the acronym, is because Mom believed in so much of togetherness, bringing people together, whether it was, in life, and now even in this phase of death or chapter for her, it's still happening, right? She's still bringing people together. I mean, I think that's pretty powerful. It still speaks to expanding on making the circle bigger. And like Pranay had also mentioned, it's about uplifting and lifting up, not just us as the hosts or, even our cameraman in the back there, Vikash, one another in this journey, but everybody that's joining us on it. That continues to happen. We continue to lift each other up. And so in that journey of embodiment, as a mentor, a mother figure, or a leader, how did that come through for you, right? When did you feel or when did this resonate strongest with you?
I think perhaps when Sandy and Claude were heading back to South Africa, we had made strong connections in the U.S. and had done our first trip to Colorado and met some Accenture friends there. And then we went to Hawaii, and, I was always up for a trip, except when they wanted to go to, I think, Kentucky. I said, no, I don't think I wanted to go on that trip. But I was always up for a trip. When they were heading back, my grandmother was feeling ill at the time, and so they went back. Um, we made the commitment to reconnect every year somewhere in the world. And those times sometimes people say those things and they don't really happen and they don't really come through, right? But I think there was a genuineness there that we both wanted to ensure that was the case, and Claude as well, right? And so I think shortly thereafter I made my first visit to South Africa. The little cutie guy up there. Um And and even then, I think, you know, she was able to bring me around and show me things and teach me about about her homeland and the place that she loved and all of those things. Um but I think even as we were going around about our travels when they came here to Florida, we went out with some of my neighbors to a tiki bar, a tiki boat cruise, kind of a Florida something. And so where I go with that, Danielle, is always wanting to be around people, right? And welcoming of all people. Um, and I think that's probably the other thing is recognizing again the things that give you energy and the things that don't. And she genuinely wanted to surround herself and be a part of other people and learn about other people. We went and did a yoga class that my neighbor was holding here in Florida, and always again that sense of curiosity and wanting to engage and connect with other people, I think is something that as a natural introvert I've actually taken from that and tried to immerse myself in that and going different places and doing different things and not just going but engaging and wanting to learn and whatnot. And so I think that's one example of how I take her with me every day. I have a travel business and try to hopefully create experiences for other people to do the things that we were able to do, and I hope to continue that on as well in my personal life of staying connected with all of you, even though I'm literally a world away. It feels like. But through WhatsApp and all the social things, that helps us stay connected. But when they left, the fact that we were able to keep that commitment, and pretty much every year, maybe barring one and COVID, we held that up. Again, some years we went with our friend Caroline. Other years we took my niece Victoria on one trip, and they were always open and welcoming. And I think that's the piece, is being welcoming and open, is something I try to do every day.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I often am, Sandy told me once we were walking somewhere and she would say, Pranay, there are no strangers, just friends we haven't met. And, just from hearing you speak with your travel journeys and where you've been and the connections she made, she was truly such a universal being, such a universal human being. And I want to ask you two questions. Being the introvert, firstly, what drew you to Sandy when you first started at Best Buy?
So I remember she came to do a visit. It's Memorial Day, so that's a May holiday here in the U.S. She came to do a visit, and I knew she was coming to do the role. I don't think we had fully announced it to the team, and I came across this photo the other day. So we did announce it to the team on that trip that she was coming, and we went out to it was a sports, I'm not going to get it right. It was a sports place, like Pinstripes was the name of it, and they had different sports activities inside, but then they had a restaurant and such. And we took the team out there, and I came across this photo the other day, Danielle. I think I was going through photos, and the minute she stepped into that environment, right? Never been to Minneapolis before, right? Had never met the team. I think there was a comfort level that it was still Accenture, right? At the end of the day. But But she stepped into that and again was so open, warm, welcoming, wanted to meet each person and really understand who they were, what their background was, what motivated them. Um, that's probably the thing I noticed about her. And I'll remember this other one. It just popped into my head. I had left that project. So Sandy came in and I had left and I came back for a visit for something we were doing, I think a training session or something. And I was sitting in an office and I came into the office and she had put on the desk a little, and I have a picture of this as well, many pictures, a little, or maybe it was on Facebook, but it was a little smiley card. It had a little smiley face on it with a candy bar, because, we love to eat and shop. So a candy bar and a little note welcoming me back to where I had been for like 3 years. But that was her way, right? She knew I was coming back and she left me this little smile face with a Snicker candy bar, which I appreciated. And then like just a little note. And that was one, the openness, the connection, right? I mean, who does that, honestly, ladies? But that's what she did. And it was she took note of those things that mattered to people. I'd been there many years, several years, and coming back was probably sort of a non-event for me, but for her, right, it was an event, and she wanted me to feel that. And so I think that's the piece that I probably innately saw in her straight away and resonated with.
Creating that sense of belonging was effortless for this human being. It was just who she was, and how she was able to, influence cultures and build organizations and teams and family units and friendship circles and connect each one. And I know through every stage of various farewells or birthday celebrations or any reason to celebrate, because exactly like you're saying, what might seem so small and 3 years later coming back for you was just a training session, for mom was an occasion, something like to be, celebrated. And I think that also speaks to the passion that she lived by, right? And what, for you, what do you think gave her that fire, and how did that passion influence you?
Coming up from challenging times, right? And many people didn't maybe know her background or your dad and, kind of that, but she shared some of that with me and I shared my own version of that with her. And I think just knowing that and I think the other thing, Danielle, is they were always on the go. Even yeah, right? Always on the go, always traveling somewhere, visiting someone. I mean, even when they were in the US, they were on the go. And I think it was that genuine curiosity, which has sort of stayed with me. I mean, your mom was the forever an extrovert, right? And so we would go somewhere and I could just be on the side and not say anything and be my little introvert self. But she was over here talking to, you know, making plans with the person that was the checker at the shop that we just went in or something, getting their phone number and exchanging information. And I'm over here like, but I think she also taught me how to be more comfortable in that way. Being a bit more, I call myself now an extroverted introvert, where I can be that way and I can be that way intentionally. But when I come home at night and my true self is like, I kind of stay to myself. But I think I learned some of that from her too. In it's okay to go ask questions, like your mother would ask questions about different things. And again, she wanted to learn and wanted to understand. And I think by going and doing, she was able to show that. I think the other thing is, if I can say from someone in the US, not a lot of people have met people from South Africa. We all think that your accents are phenomenal, by the way. We love them. Joking. But I think that was a learning and a teaching for others too, because not a lot of people in the US have maybe even been out of the country, but also met individuals or people from South Africa itself. And so she and your dad and you, Danielle, when you were here too, were able to educate other people just by being you and engaging with people, right? Not just kind of staying to yourselves. So I think there's a component of that. And when I travel, I don't do very well, but I try to learn a little bit of the language to try to, again, show respect and to engage with people. I think in my past, I probably would have just been quiet and stayed in my little corner. But I'm getting better at engaging, trying to.
Liz, thank you so much for sharing and bringing to life the version of Sandy that has shaped you, nurtured you, and grown you. Before we close, we do ask all our guests a signature question, and we have it for you. Who lifted you up, and how are you lifting others up today?
I think for me, it was my mother early on, right? She worked very hard. She was a single mom and raised 3 kids. And I saw her work tremendously hard. And she was fiercely loyal to her kids and her family, and worked tirelessly. She taught me about responsibility, right? From a young age, if I wanted a pair of designer jeans, she would say, "Well, that's fine, but you have to pay half." Right. So she taught me that the value of work and the value of responsibility, which I try to carry through this day. So she's probably the first one that that lifted me up, and maybe in a similar way as I reflect, maybe in a similar way to Sandy in some ways. My mother was loving and caring, but she was also, she was a straight shooter, as they say. So that's probably the first one. And then I think for me, how do I take it forward? For me, I in my work life, I try to be open and engage with people and help and support them as people. People first, employees second, perhaps. You might maybe say it that way, in my work world. And then I think in my personal life, I guess I do try to also cultivate those relationships and connections that I have with people. I have friends all over the world, case in point. And so making sure that we stay connected, making sure that we, if I go somewhere on a trip, and I've done this for a long time, but I guess in reflecting, I think it's in my way. If I go somewhere on a trip, I'll share it on Facebook, or I'll reach out to people and say, "I'm going to be in town. Do you want to get together?" And I think that's my way of maintaining connections, fostering those relationships that matter to me, whether they were work or friend or both, right? So I think that's my way of doing it, especially because I am, where I live now, I have some close friends in my community, but a lot of my closest friends are all over the world. And so I think for me, it's recognizing those people, taking the time, much like Sandy, to make sure they know that I'm thinking of them, that they matter, and being there for them in my own way, I suppose.
Thanks, Liz. You truly do embody the acronym LiftUp. And we're really appreciative of you sharing all you have to gain, not just in the words, but through your actions, and consistently so, and how you keep the lessons and the legacy alive that, will always be Sandy Mahonathan. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing so freely and openly. You've made us smile. You've really touched the heart and the soul. You really have kept the memory of this incredible human being alive in this time, captured. So thank you for sharing so freely with us. To the thought leader, Claude Mahonathan, thank you for bringing this idea to life. Mom would be proud. To Pranay, for being a fabulous co-host. Thank you for the support and for being here through this journey of healing and lifting up as you rise and continue to. To Vikash, the man behind the camera and the lens, thank you for giving up your time to put all of this together. It's not easy. It's a critical part of this. So seriously, thank you. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. This has been a pleasure bringing you several guests, and will continue to do so, again, to keep LiftUp in top of mind and carrying everybody forward and onwards. So please share with as many as possible, far and wide. Subscribe and like to all our channels on YouTube, on Apple Music, on Spotify, on Mom's channel specifically. But thank you for your time, everybody, and continue to lift up.